welcome everybody. A lot of familiar faces and some new ones, and having all the kids here is really great. I think the Porcupines really going to like you too. I'm Sue Murray, president of Hartland Land Trust. I'm delighted to say we're in our 8th year, with each continuous year bringing more and more success. Our dedicated board of directors, members, and volunteers deserve the credit, and all of you here tonight as well. We have a great evening planned, starting with the Porcupine presentation, gracefully sponsored by our Land Conservation and Stewardship Chair, Mark Ziernick, and his wife, Penny, librarian at the Hartland School. They're at a wedding tonight, so they can't be here tonight. We hope you have some tickets for our door prizes. We have one of our baseball caps, which is new to the table, and we also have a bluebird house, which was made by Matt Bluen in West Hartland. And his father has a woodworking shop in the basement, and I guess he's in the trade now. We also have some barnwood signs over here on the table for sale that were made by a director of ours, Chris Anderson. She's also at a wedding this week. It must be a popular weekend for weddings. And I already mentioned the baseball caps. One's a door prize, and we also have them for sale. They have our logo on them and our name. They're made in the USA. And we want to thank Rebecca Huntley right here, who's a director and also our treasurer, for doing the work on getting them together. Tonight's presentation is with Jerry Griswold. She's presented bats before, and she's a very good presenter. She's a director of administration and development at the White Memorial Conservation Center in Litchfield. She's handled bats for 21 years as a wildlife rehabilitator and educator, and is licensed by the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection and the U.S. Department of Agriculture to keep and exhibit non-releasable bats, and more recently, porcupines for education. Jerry also serves as the morning voice of traffic on WTIC AM.
I'm only the messenger.
WZMX.
Only the messenger.
Yeah, it's a good thing too. Jerry's going to be talking to us about the North American porcupine, and with any luck, her quill pig may chime in too. Interestingly, for the first time in a really, really long time, I saw a porcupine outside my front door. During the day hours, way up in a tree. I don't know if it was eating leaves or what it really was doing, but I'm sure Jerry will let us know all about it. I'm going to let Jerry tell you the real story about the elusive 3rd largest rodent in the world, and I'd like to have you give her a warm welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me out tonight. I have handled bats for 21 years, and when I became a wildlife rehabilitator in 1992, my mission was to go out and spread forth all the good news and good word about bats. And I think I've done a pretty decent job of it over the years, but always underlying in my heart was a porcupine. I really have loved porcupines because, like you guys up here in East Hartland, I'm from Winchester, and we're porcupine territory. A lot of people in Connecticut don't even realize that porcupines exist in our state, and that's what makes so much fun to present them to people. In 2006, an absolutely heinous fungus came into the United States inadvertently from Europe called white nose syndrome, Geomyces destructans, and it started affecting our bat populations. It began spreading from Howe Caverns in New York State and quickly and rapidly spread into New England. It hit Connecticut in 2008, 2009, and started wiping out our bats. And I'm sure all of you here have been impacted by WNS and have noticed the lack of bats in your backyard. And it's not getting any better. It has now spread to 28 states, into 5 Canadian provinces. It's killed 8 million animals, and it is unstoppable. Less than $1 million of federal funding has gone into the study of white nose syndrome, and it's split up amongst 28 states, and I'm sure Connecticut's not getting the lion's share of this. I begin talking about this because if you're not aware of WNS, I hope you are now. and that there is a lot of information out there available to you because, you know, it's out there, it sort of hits the media a little bit and then it disappears, and then, you know, if a bat is tested positive for rabies, then you hear all about it. So bats have always been my animal, but it just seemed as the white nose syndrome started ripping bats out of my life, all of a sudden it started raining porcupines on me. So, you know, whereas in the beginning of my rehab career, as it were, I would handle maybe one porcupine every couple of years, maybe every 5 years or something like that. All of a sudden I had 3 living with me from all sorts of ages and all sorts of problems. And I actually found a veterinarian up in Falls Village that likes porcupines, believe it or not. She worked with them out at the zoo in Minneapolis. And so I'm really happy that I found a vet that feels so cozy with porcs. That I have a super veterinarian for vet care right now. And again, if I get bats, we just keep our fingers crossed. I can never guarantee anymore when somebody books a bat program with me if I'll have a live animal for presentation, because everything is completely gone. So the animal that I brought with me tonight has been taken from the wild, and she'll never be released. It's not a cruel gesture on my part. She doesn't want to be released. I think it's an old animal. We really don't know her backstory or her history, but she wandered into a barn in Winchester, not too far from my home actually, 2 years ago, and the woman really enjoyed having the porcupine around, but the porcupine was just hanging out begging like a dog, and the woman had a horse, and this animal's never exhibited any kind of aggressive behavior to me ever, but the horse kept on walking past the porcupine, rubbing up against it and getting quills in its leg, so the lady thought it might be best if I relocated the porcupine. So when I went to collect her, believe it or not, her name is the new one. When I collected the new one, I just put a crate down. I thought it would have my gauntlets on, and it's going to be a big production, and she just walked into the crate. And she's been with me ever since. She has issues. She's never climbed, which is rare for a porcupine. Susan was just talking about a porcupine in a tree. That's where they should be during the day. But new one has never done anything porcupine-ish in terms of trying to climb. She's never used her tail against me, and I'm grateful for that. And she'll be very nervous when I hold her tonight. I'm going to actually clear off my projector at the end of the program and put a pad on the table and hold her on the table. She's not thrilled with being in presentations, but that's her lot in life. If she's getting free food from me, she's got to work once in a while. So let's begin with a little adventure into the lives of North American porcupine. It's an interesting animal because I find myself with porcupines exactly in the same spot that I found myself with bats 20 years ago, where nobody was working with them. Now a lot more people are working and handling bats. And here I am working and handling an animal that I'm not so sure anybody else in Connecticut is spending as much time with them as I am. And also so little is known about them that a person like myself that has no science background whatsoever, just an extraordinary passion, can actually contribute to the study of this animal. It's amazing that bats and porcupines have kind of fallen by the wayside in terms of people's attention. So let's take a little trip and learn a bit more about them. The North American porcupine, there is its Latin name. It's also known as a Canadian porcupine or a common porcupine, and it's a large rodent in the New World porcupine family. The world is broken up into the Old World, which is Australia, Africa, Europe, Asia, and then the New World, which is North America and South America. So ours is a New World porcupine, and the beaver is the only rodent in North America that's larger than our North American porcupine. The largest rodent in the world is in South America, the capybara. And if any of you have ever seen one, they're sometimes parts of zoo collections. They look like a dog almost, or a pig really, and they have webbed feet. They spend a lot of time in the water. They're very, very big rodents. So there are over 40 species of porcupines in the world today. Now, that's something that I wasn't prepared to learn. I thought maybe 3 or 4. I've seen some in zoo collections around the world, but I certainly didn't realize that we had 40 species. And one was just discovered, I think it was last year, in Brazil. So the porcupine's ancestors rafted to South America, to Brazil in particular, from Africa about 30 million years ago. And then 3 million years, they kind of made their way up into North America with the rising of the Isthmus of Panama. Old World porcupines spend their lives on the ground. Our New World porcupines spend their lives on the ground and mostly in trees. So the Old World porcupines are constructed a little bit differently, so not climbers. Many of them have quills that are very, very different looking. I have 2 quills from an African crested porcupine here, and these are small. The quills of an African crested porcupine can grow to almost 2 feet. And yes, they're pretty formidable. They're not barbed like the quills of our North American porcupine. And when these animals get angry or upset, what they'll do is they'll splay their backs open and they'll take these and they'll rattle them together and stomp their feet and chatter their teeth. And hopefully that's enough. And these are really pointy. You could really do some harm with these. And hopefully that's enough to thwart off any kind of predator. But again, their entire lives are spent on the ground. And a lot of them, like this one, for example, this is an African crested. These look a little bit like our North American porcupine, but others don't look at all like porcupines. They look more like rats. They look like a big modified rat. So an Asiatic brush-tailed porcupine, an African brush-tailed porcupine. So part of that tail is bare, but they're covered with fur, and then of course a world of danger on every single one of them. This is an Indonesian porcupine. I saw one of these at the Artist Zoo in Amsterdam a couple of years ago, so it's rather large. It's much bigger than our North American porcupine. Look at the quills on that thing, isn't that incredible? You can see why they call them quill pigs. And doesn't it look a little like a little pig in a way, the face? Some of these from Asia look similar to ours, but the very big difference is that they have a longer neck. Their head is more elongated. Ours is a very short, stout, chunky head. They have the same sort of looking tail, but it certainly isn't the same tail. But more similar is this one. The North African crested is an animal that you see frequently in zoo collections in the United States. And the thick spine, I can't even imagine how thick the spines are on this because I was just holding the two from the North African crested, and they're fairly substantial, so the thick spine has to be very, very substantial as well. And New World porcupines, one of the great dividends of, this is a portrait if you haven't guessed, of a porcupine I had named Pacer. And one of the great dividends of teaching about these animals is I teach kids a lot, and this was a portrait that a child did of Pacer, and I thought it was spot on. Should be in a biology book or a study guide. South American porcupines have prehensile tails. Do we know what that means? They're like almost like an extra appendage. They wrap around things that give the animal stability in a tree. We do have a mammal here in North America that has a prehensile tail. It's a marsupial. An opossum, the only marsupial in North America. So our opossum has a prehensile tail. It really doesn't hang from the tail, but it does use that tail as a stabilizer. It could hang if it had to. But these guys mostly spend their time up in a tree canopy, and they'll use that tail as an extra, it's almost like an extra added hand. They're all covered in quills, just like our North American, but they look a little bit different. They probably range around, they're about 10 pounds, 10 to 12 pounds at the most. This Brazilian porcupine, covered in quills, is very, very commonly found in zoo collections. I think it's as cute as a button. Just adorable little things. And this is the species that was just found. I believe it was last year or possibly the year before, found in Brazil. Can you imagine? I mean, I can understand us finding a species of ant that we've never found before, or maybe even a little bird. I mean, the rainforests are so vast, but for a guy like this to be this big and go undetected for thousands of years is really incredible to me. But yes, he was truly just found. He weighs about 10 pounds. He lives on buds and fruit and root vegetables. And what's really interesting about this animal, which is different from our North American, is that part of the tail has absolutely no quills. And that tail is used as a fifth hand that helps them hold onto branches as they climb up through a forest canopy. Cute. And then, of course, the North American. This was my beloved Pacer. Pacer was the animal that really got me into the nuts and bolts of learning about these animals. She was found in Sessions Woods in Burlington in 2011, in the fall of 2011. She had problems from out of the gate. There was definitely an issue with her. I think that she had fallen out of a tree and sustained some sort of neurological damage. She could never walk properly. She certainly could never climb. But boy, she was a great education tool and a sweetheart, an absolute sweetheart. I could carry her around in my bare arms. I could pick her up with my bare hands. And sure, I would always collect a few quills on myself. It's just part of the territory of handling these animals. But she was an absolute sweetheart, and really the public absolutely adored her. Porcupines have this gorgeous thick winter coat, but underneath all of that luscious soft fur is a world of danger. There are only two areas on a porcupine's body that don't have quills. That's its nose and its belly. Those are the only two areas that make it vulnerable. And their teeth are formidable because these animals are rodents. They're chewing wood constantly, so they have super sharp teeth. They certainly can chew through bone. So as I continue to learn and handle them, I really maintain that I'm more fearful of their teeth than I am the quills. The quills I can deal with now. The teeth I'm terrified of. But they're really reasonably docile in captivity. You just have to know what you're doing. And I've learned from the School of Hard Knocks. Lazy animals, they are lazy. Unlike the industrious beaver that is taking down trees and building lodges and always coming, going, and doing something, lazy old porcupine just finds a home in a hollowed out tree, an old trunk, in a rock crevice. Of course, a big old glacier a mile high was crawling over us about 15,000 years ago and left a calling card of glacial erratics, and many of those are great, great homes and dens for porcupines. Like any rodent, they're very clean animals. They're very meticulous, very tidy animals, and they have certain areas of their dens where they use as bathrooms. So it makes it really great as a wildlife rehabilitator if you have one living in your home and it's wandering around a room. It uses its crate, its den, as its bathroom. So they come almost house trained. So I learned that pretty quickly. It's a pretty interesting little thing about them. And they're not groomers, they'll scratch, but there's obviously they're not going to be licking their fur or anything like that. First of all, their neck is too short to turn around and do any kind of grooming, so they have kind of an oily coat on most of their quills. And if they're going to get clean, it's because they're either going swimming, which is rare, but they will. They'll go out swimming looking for lily pads. They love the high salt and potassium content in a lily pad, and their quills make them very buoyant. So they're usually dark brown or black in color with white highlights, and they have a chunky body with a small face, short legs, and a short, thick tail. The head and body length is between 25 and 41 inches, not counting a 6 to 12-inch tail, and their weight can range from 4 pounds to nearly 40 pounds. The average is about 20 pounds, and I believe new one must weigh around 15 or 16 pounds. This was an interesting animal that came from Washington, Connecticut with a broken leg. It was struck by a car. It happens a lot. And she came in to me late, and I had a vet appointment for her, and before I could get her to the vet, she managed to find her way out of her enclosure, and she released herself. So I don't know if it's no sense, no feeling, but these animals can walk around with fractures all the time. I have a book on the table over there, How Do You Spank a Porcupine? And it was, at one point, the only book that was written about them that I knew of. And Ronald Rood, the man was a school teacher, a science teacher, and had visited natural history museums all over the place. And he said every collection, if it had a porcupine skeleton in it, those skeletons, every single one had a fracture. So they fall out of trees, they get hit by cars, they're clumsy as all get out, but they keep on trucking. They keep on trucking. So this sweet thing is wandering around somewhere on 3 legs. The upper parts of their body are covered with thousands of sharp, barbed, hollow spines or quills. They're actually modified hairs. It's made of the same stuff our hair is made out of, and they're used always for defense. They don't throw their quills, which is one of the great old wives' tales about them, but the quills quickly detach, and the barbs on the quills make them difficult to remove once they're lodged in an attacker. The quills are normally flattened against the body unless the animal is disturbed. When it is disturbed, it will stop, sometimes chatter its teeth. Sometimes it will splay its back open and expose all the quills, and it will also swing its tail back and forth sometimes. And I think that the tail is the most dangerous portion of a porcupine because the quills on it are teeny weeny, many of them very small. And it's one thing, like my arm in this picture, to pick up Pacer and get a couple of quills in my arm. But look at the resistance my skin is giving as I pull that quill out. And that was just gently picking up an animal. If you're a dog and that tail hits you, that's going to be really, really bad. We've got a picture of some really bad dogs at the end of the program. So the tail is a formidable weapon. It's solid muscle. It can be used as a barker lounger. They can sit up on their hind legs and their tail, and the tail is really, really thick and heavy and helps them actually. I've seen them use their tail as a way to stabilize themselves as they're moving down a tree. They'll go down backwards, of course. So the porcupine is the only native North American mammal with antibiotics in its skin, and those antibiotics prevent infection when it falls out of a tree and gets stuck with its own quills when it hits the ground. And like I said, they fall all the time. They are. I just don't understand how this animal could be kicking around 3 million years and not be completely extinct. Just amazing. Yeah. This is a knucklehead. It's a species of Homo sapien known as a subspecies called knucklehead. And I'm sure that there must have been alcohol involved as well.
How did he get that?
I think that he saw a porcupine going into a den and he stuck his head in there and bad things happened. I just can't even imagine how painful it is. I've been quilled plenty of times, never to this extent, and certainly not in my head. But just to show you that a visit to the doctor, that must have been one interesting visit. Because this is what they look like under a microscope. I think when porcupines have barbed quills, we think of a fish hook that has 1 or 2 barbs on it, but they're barbed about 2/3 of the way down. And you can only imagine, once those things go in, it is really painful to get them out. Yes, you can clip off the end and twist them counterclockwise. I mean, you'd still be working on that guy's head. It would take forever to do that. It's best just to sit there and yank them out and suffer the consequences. But the problem is also if you're a predator and those go in, there's a good chance, especially if it's a canine, like a coyote, and it bites a porcupine and they get those quills in their soft palate, those can go up into the brain. And also they get whacked on the side, those quills can move into the viscera. And one of those can kill an animal. So even their top predators will take them as an act of desperation. I think the fisher is probably the only one that'll just go, I'm going in for it because this is my favorite tasty food. But seriously, even the top predators are going to avoid tampering with this animal. So you would think there would be a gazillion porcupines wandering around, but there really aren't. They're low breeders too. They don't have many babies. They're as blind as can be. They have a great sense of smell. They have a great sense of hearing. And again, a really bad eyesight. Aldous Rose, who wrote 2 books that the projector is sitting on right now. Aldous is the greatest authority of porcupines in the world, all species. And Aldous said that he met a completely blind porcupine in the wild, in the Catskills. Lord knows how long she had been there. She was a very old animal, and he actually collected her and brought her to the Queen's Zoo. She was in quarantine and she died. They were going to put her on display. But this animal can be completely blind and do very well out in the wild as long as there are no roads around. So their eyesight is really lousy. One female lives in a 50-acre territory. And others will cross it, and others might spend some time there, but basically 1 50-acre territory per female. And they've got a really great recall. Like other rodents can learn mazes, porcupines learn complex mazes. They're not going to just eat any tree. They have specific trees that they really like. And they can remember for a very long time. This says up to 100 days, but I think they have a longer recall than that. They will remember where certain trees are on the property and their property, and they'll go to feed at those trees only, or they'll have their favorites. They're pretty smart like that. Their skull, if you look at their teeth, well, they are a rodent, so their front teeth, those orange teeth, grow. Are you talking in here? I thought I heard her. Their front teeth are orange in the front and white in the back. I have no idea. Beavers are the same, but we just harvested a woodchuck skull at White Memorial the other day, and we were really amazed to see that the skull looks exactly like this, but the teeth are white completely. So obviously, woodchuck isn't somebody that chews trees the way beavers and porcupines do, so the orange has to have something to do with whatever this animal's eating, and that's primarily the bark of trees or the cambium underneath the bark of trees. So their teeth are constantly growing, and that's why they gnaw all the time. All rodents gnaw. All rodents are destructive. Squirrels are destructive. Beavers are destructive. Porcupines are very destructive. Maybe not so much in our area, but when you get further north, and if you're somebody that has a nice little cottage in the Adirondacks and an outhouse that's made of plywood, and you're not there to tend to it, they're going to level that thing. They're just going to level it. Again, they're big chewers. And you can see by its teeth, I mean, you find an animal skull in the woods, and the first thing you can do is start, shortening the list of the possibilities of what that mammal is, just based on its dentition. I mean, if you look at the teeth of a porcupine, what do you think it eats? It's a total vegetarian, a total herbivore. Our canines, canines are primarily carnivores. If you look at the molars of a canine, they're even pointed. Our molars are just like his. Our canines are not very canine-ish. I mean, really, in a human's diet, we should have more fruits, vegetables, grains, not a lot of meat. And porcupine is strictly an herbivore. So they fall out of trees, as I've said, clumsy as all get out, because they're very highly tempted by the tender buds and twigs at the ends of the branches. And the porcupine and the skunk are the only North American mammals that are black and white, because they're the only mammals that benefit from letting other animals know where and who they are in the dark of night. Now, who's been at ground zero where a skunk is sprayed? Oh, my goodness. Does that burn or what? It's like being pepper sprayed or maced. Can you imagine if you're a dog and you get that in the face? What a hot mess. So, you know, that's a pretty good indication at night that you see black and white moving around. Ugh, skunk, I don't want to deal with that. Porcupine, forget that. 30,000 reasons why I don't want to deal with that thing either. And I think that's an interesting fact about them. Oh, here you go, Susan. Porcupines are mainly active at night, but on summer days they often rest in trees. So you're never going to see one curled up on the ground and, you know, having a happy moment sleeping. You're always going to find them sleeping high up in trees. If it's a beautiful day like today and you're walking through the forest here and you feel water droplets on you, sorry, they're too lazy to go down and use the bathroom somewhere. So in the summer they eat twigs and roots and stems and berries and other vegetation, and in the winter they eat junk. It would be like me feeding you guys potato chips all winter long. They just eat conifer needles and bark. So it's really important that there's a good acorn mass, that there are abundant foods available to them in the spring, in the summer, and in the fall, because in the winter there's precious little. They are not true hibernators. We only have 3 mammals in our state that are true hibernators: the bat, yay, the woodchuck, and there's a species of mouse that are true hibernating mammals. Our bears don't hibernate, our raccoons don't hibernate, our porcupines don't hibernate. They sleep a lot, but they actually come out and move about sometimes as well. So again, they don't go into that deep, deep, full sleep of hibernation. The porcupines do stay very close to their dens in the winter. I hear you in there. That's what they do. The strength of the porcupine's defense, this is the coolest thing. I love this about them. The strength of the porcupine's defense has given it the ability to live a solitary existence, unlike other herbivores and other mammals that move in flocks and herds. Think about that. Think about the great exodus of elk. Think about wildebeest, zebras, birds, starlings, European starlings, the passenger pigeon. It was just laid out there, just waiting to be shot to death. Horses, cows, goats. I have goats at home. I would never have just one goat. That would be cruel. They're a herding animal. They need buddies. And that's safety in numbers. The only thing these animals have the ability to do is run. That's it. And if you're running in a big flock, or you're herd and you're flying in a big flock, maybe Mr. Hawk is going to grab your buddy next to you and you're going to be safe. And the same thing goes with zebras. Maybe Mr. Cheetah is going to grab that one's kid and your kid's going to be okay. Safety in numbers, safety in numbers, safety in numbers. Porcupine, he's got 30,000 friends on his back. He doesn't need anybody. He doesn't need anybody. So when I get them, I house them separately. It's not that they will attack each other, but they're used to a solitary life, so they don't want to be competing with each other for food bowls or anything like that. I just think that's a really super cool fact about an herbivore, that it lives that kind of life. So they breed in the fall, and the young porcupines are called porcupets. Oh. What genius made up that name. It's so adorable. The mother gives birth to just one baby, just one. A year, just one a year, so a low birth rate, and they're born with soft quills, and I'm sure the mother is eternally grateful for that. But those quills will harden in just a few hours, and those little guys are perfectly capable of defending themselves in 3 hours. They spend 6 months with their mothers. 6 months, that's a really long time for an animal that you wouldn't consider to be very sophisticated. And just at the onset of winter is when these little guys are off on their own for the very first time. And that can be pretty tough. I lied on the slide. 15 years of lifespan. Aldous says 24 years. They can live for a long time, so pretty long life for a rodent as well. When the porcupines are mating, they tighten their skin and hold their quills flat so as not to injure each other, and I'm sure they're both very grateful for that. This was my little porcupine Skeeter. I can't tell you what her name means in Icelandic. You can go and look at that up yourself, but it really kind of illustrated the kind of personality she had. She died not too long ago, actually. Her mother was killed, which is very, very common for these animals to get struck by cars. And she was found on Route 272 between Torrington and Norfolk. She was only about a month old when she came to me, and she was only with me for about a year and a half. And I do believe that these animals need to be living with their mothers the entire 6 months, because obviously I'm not able to give her what her mother can give her, milk-wise or food-wise. They start foraging immediately. They'll start eating regular plants, but they obviously need something in their mother's milk, and perhaps she never even got enough colostrum, I don't know. But this little animal that looks like Don King in this picture, she was one of the toughest things I've ever handled. I have handled wild porcupines that were like lap dogs, but this one, she was a monster. She was a monster. Cute as a button. They're a very hugely salt-driven animal, but they're also considered a big pest. They can destroy trees, they can destroy homes, they can destroy your boots if you're a hiker and you've been sweating all day and you're sleeping in your tent at night. They're going to come out and eat your boots. They're going to eat the axe handle. You've been chopping firewood. You're almost so tired. I'm going to chop some firewood. Leave the axe in the stump, and they're going to come and eat the axe handle. They're going to eat your canoe handle. The sweat from your hand makes that wood very, very tasty to a porcupine. So they're very, very salt driven, and they can be a real problem. Plywood is especially vulnerable because its salts are added during the manufacture of them. Aldous has told me that he's seen people purposely veer off the road when he's driving up to his home in the Catskills to kill a porcupine, because they can be a real problem. It's interesting here in Connecticut. Have any of you ever had problems with them destroying things? No. Isn't that funny that none of us have a problem, so we're just like, oh, porcupines, it's really great. Don't talk to anybody in the Adirondacks or the Catskills about them. I mean, they're just like, oh, you know, I can't kill enough of them. They're terrible. They chew everything. They destroy my apple trees. They do all this stuff. We just don't have a big enough population in Connecticut that would cause us a lot of agita with them, and unfortunately other people do, and they can be a real problem. But again, a really cool animal. There is no interest in these animals really from the biologists at the state of Connecticut. And I'm not angry at them at all, for they don't have the resources to study them. But when I wanted to have a porcupine program at White Memorial a couple of years ago, I just assumed I could call up the DEP and they would send a biologist out and they would be able to talk about porcupine populations in Connecticut. Nobody even studies them here. They just figure that the populations are robust enough and they know where they live and there isn't really anything to learn about them. So I called Aldous Rose, the greatest zoologist in the world. And he lives in the Catskills as well as in Westchester County, and I've had Aldous out twice to talk to our groups about porcupines. So it's kind of sad for me that not a lot of research is done about them in Connecticut, but really, I guess, you know, it's resources as well. The quills are used by Native Americans to decorate articles such as baskets and clothing, and I brought a choker and a little basket made of porcupine quills from the Institute of American Indian Studies in Washington. Porcupines are, believe it or not, edible. And they're an important source of food, especially in the winter, to the natives of Canada's boreal forest. I had a guy in a program a couple of weeks ago who is a real hunter and gatherer, and he collects roadkill for dinner. And, you know, okay, I guess I can understand that. And his whole family was into it, and he just ate a porcupine shortly before he came to my program. And I asked him what it was like, and he said the meat was really dark, and he couldn't even describe it. So I don't know what that means, but his face didn't, you know, crinkle up or anything. Like, I guess it was edible enough. I mean, they do eat nuts and you know, roots and fruits and things like that. Flesh possibly couldn't be that bad. They have kind of a body odor smell to them, so I wonder if that disappears. Because they move so slowly, having few threats in the natural environment, they're frequently hit by cars while crossing the road, and this is one of the biggest problems they face here in Connecticut. And because they're nocturnal and they're so dark that your vehicle's on top of them before they even have a chance, and you have a chance to react or they have a chance to move, because they move really slowly. I've seen them moving across the roads in Winchester where I live during the daytime, and I'll always pull a U-turn, do a U-turn, and go up and behind them and beat the horn, hang on the horn, and they just stop in the road and they splay their back. Okay, car, come on, I'm gonna take you on. And so I'll pull the car over, and I help them across the road, and they make a little bit of a fuss, but you can poke them with a stick. And it's an animal that I wouldn't encourage you to go and approach wildlife. I really wouldn't. It's dangerous. but a porcupine is never going to attack you. There's no reason for a porcupine to attack anything because it's got all this defense on it. So it is an animal that you can approach in the wild and really and truly enjoy. I would not recommend that with almost any other thing. It's really, wild animals should be appreciated from a distance, but porcupines have every reason to believe that they're going to take you down if you try to mess with them. So it's a fun animal to observe in the wild, and I've had great experiences observing porcupines in the wild and in my home. So talk about weddings. Everybody's off at weddings. Still, if you're going to a wedding, here's a really great idea. Salad tongs and servers made out of African crested porcupine quills, or that cool mirror that you would suggest not hanging above your bed or your bathtub. So the natural pair, yeah. My dog attacked, no, a porcupine attacked my dog. No, wrong. Natural predators of the species include fishers, they're number one. Humans really are number two. Wolverines, coyotes, wolves, bears, cougars, and humans. Due to its dangerous quills, the North American porcupine is often avoided as prey, and even the regular predators may be harmed or killed by the quills. Most predators will attempt to stun or cause massive blood loss with an attack to the face, so a fisher will grab the nose of them, and will flip them over and attack them from the underside, because again, the unprotected areas are the nose and the belly. To avoid predation, the porcupines climb up trees at any sign of danger, since most of their natural predators cannot pursue them once they're up a tree. These dogs are up a tree, let me tell you that. Again, when somebody tells me that their dog was attacked by a porcupine, I just have to say, no, I'm sorry, your dog attacked a porcupine. There is absolutely no reason for a porcupine to chase down anything. And remember, I was telling you that there is one animal in a territory. All of these two dogs have taken the quills from just one animal. So it just goes to show you how vast the amount of quills are on a porcupine. And they're hair, so they just grow back. And I'm sure that there are plenty of quills left for the dog's cousin if he happened to come through also. So if you live in an area, as we do, and you have a beloved dog and you've got porcupines, please never let your dog roam. You shouldn't let them roam anyway.
How long does it take the quills to grow back?
That I don't know. I don't know. I think our hair grows back pretty quickly. And no dog is going to be around long enough to exfoliate a porcupine completely. I've never seen a bald porcupine. Never, ever. So probably that was enough. This is a sad story, but I just think these pictures are so beautiful. This animal came from People's State Forest 2 years ago. Actually, Nikki Hall. Yeah. Nikki Hall brought this animal to me. And he was hit by a car pretty badly, very badly actually, and my vet had to put him down. But I just love looking at his feet. See, he has just 4 toes. They have just 4 toes, but the pad of their foot is really kind of movable, so it almost acts as another appendage. And I love these pictures because of how you can see the texture on the bottom of their feet. It's just like the sole of your shoe that helps give them traction when they're climbing trees. And what I think is most beautiful about this is how beautifully worn his claws were. And this old war horse had been climbing trees left and right. He had a broken leg, and I thought it was a fresh break, but when we put him in x-ray, we realized the leg had been broken for years, and it was locked. It was really locked. So this old guy had been lumbering around People's Forest for years on 3 legs and finally got hit by a car again, and it was his undoing. But I just had to take pictures of his feet before we put him down, because I just thought that was beautiful. For me, it looks almost simian in a way. Don't they look kind of gorilla-like? They're kind of interesting, really interesting. King of the beast, my foot. There's just no way in the world this lion is serious about what he's doing. There's just no way. And now we all know how big a lion is. Can you imagine how big the quills are on that crested porcupine? Those have got to be 20, 24 inches, easily. So this lion, you can just tell by its posture, this is not an animal serious about this prey. It's probably a young one just toying with it. A beautiful photograph. I wish I'd taken this, but you can see how their eyes are set. They have lousy eyesight, so it's a winter day. You know how soft snow is. A predator's sneaking up on this guy, and it happens to be downwind, so he's not hearing him, he's not seeing him, and he's certainly not smelling him. What in the world is going to protect him? Every single one of those hairs is so nerve triggered. They're so sensitive that if you touch one of those hairs, he's going to feel you. He's going to know you're there, and quickly up with the quills and shaking of the tail. Every single one of those little hairs on him is an extra guard. I call them guard hairs or trigger hairs. So I had to give myself a shout out for losing 60 pounds. I'm on a big adventure to lose 110 pounds and finally understand what it's like to feel healthy for the first time in my life. But this was a picture of Pacer in 2000. It was 2011, December 31st. It was her very first program, and 100 people came out to White Memorial to visit her. She was extraordinary. Such a good buddy, such a great ambassador. Here she is with her winter coat on. So she was just less than a year old when this picture was taken. She was probably seven months old or 8 months old when this photograph was taken. But she was just a love. She died on my birthday a year ago. And of course, that's always a great thing to happen on your birthday. We took her out because she could never really walk well. She fell over all the time. She could never climb trees. We took her out. The porcupine, I'm not talking about my sister. We try to keep her caged. My sister Bonnie is a vet tech, and Bonnie would help me with my porcupines and help shuttle them up to the veterinarian's office and stuff like that. So we'd take Bonnie and Pacer out for walks in the yard, and it was really fun to watch her, not Bonnie, the porcupine nuzzle the grass and eat things on the ground, and just have some time outside as opposed to her big cushy apartment that she had. She loved Bonnie, and she was a very affectionate animal. And again, I'm not saying this makes a good pet. They don't make good pets, and there aren't too many like Pacer around. But she knew us, and she knew each of us, and she would come over and sit on your lap, or she'd always want to be in my arms. She was really a super special animal. Bonnie is too. Nothing she loved more than a baby carrot. They're just, giving her a carrot, it was just like, oh, euphoria. It'd be like taking me to the Dairy Queen. What am I going to have? Oh, fantastic. Oh. That's my backyard, and I'd let her climb. You can see her claws are a lot longer than the old war horse that was in that picture. She had very long quills, and we would have to bring her to the veterinarian for manicures. And the vet would put a mask on her because, remember, I was telling you about how they recall things. They recall bad things, too. And so the vet never wanted Pacer to associate manicures with me, so she would cover her head and make sure that Pacer at least hopefully didn't know it was myself that was involved in this nasty doing of giving her a manicure. She would fall asleep in my arms. We'd take selfies together. She was so special. She really was special. Oh. That's my other sister, Catherine. We let her out once in a while, too. It's a nut house where I live. There's my peacock on the roof of the upper deck of my home. And there's my lovely little porcupine. And you can see when they shed out their winter coat, new one still has a little winter coat left on her, but in the summer, it's all quills that you're seeing. All quills. All the hair is gone, and it's just all of the quills that are waiting for you to make the wrong move. So, that was heavy.
That was awesome.
Does anybody have any questions before I bring out this grumpy thing?
Yeah, are they related to hedgehogs, Jerry?
No, they're not. Hedgehogs are insectivores. I think hedgehogs are related to anteaters, possibly. So they're not. Hedgehogs are not rodents at all. The quills of a hedgehog are very, very different. I have an old beaten-up hedgehog taxidermy specimen, and I should have brought it for you guys tonight. The spines of the hedgehog don't detach like porcupines do. I had a really cool hedgehog experience in London in 1981. I'm as old as dirt. I actually saw one in the wild, and they play possum. They play dead. And they curl up in this little spiky ball, and you can touch them. They're not going to try to bite you. You can touch them. And yeah, very, very interesting. But yeah, they're insectivores. I believe more closely related to anteaters, nothing to do with porcupines whatsoever. Other questions? You can shout them out.
I had a raccoon come up the back of the yard.
My condolences.
It was filled with porcupine quills in the snow. Would a raccoon go for a porcupine?
Carrion.
Why?
Carrion or a stupid raccoon. There's a video that I see occasionally. It comes to me. I'm a big lover of ravens, crazy about ravens. And there's a video that gets passed to me on Facebook sometimes about a raven that was attacked by a porcupine. Well, we all know that ravens will take prey, but also they're opportunistic and they're going to go for carrion. And this little raven obviously started eating a dead porcupine and got quills in it and just sat there on a fence and let people pull the quills out. So the raccoon was either A, stupid, or B, just looking for junk to eat. And that's probably what happened.
It's dead?
Oh, sure.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yep. Yeah, they come out so easily. Here's a little cup of joy that I have here. I mean, just to show you, I'm not doing anything and it just sticks in your finger.
Ouch.
Yeah, they're, I know, I'm crazy, huh? Who would support this animal? You know, people always say to me, well, what can a bat do for me? What can a bat, what's so great about bats? What can they do for me? Don't even get me going. I stand on the soapbox and there I go. You want a tequila? Do you want your margarita? You wouldn't have margarita if it weren't for a bat. Bats are the sole pollinator of the agave plant, and the tequila comes from the agave. #1 control of night flying insects worldwide. Wait a minute. Why do we have to justify the existence of another species? Why do we have to? But okay, fine, humans, if you need to have an animal, serve you, we're so conceited, everything is here to serve us, then I'll give you the laundry list of what bats do for you. Ask me what a porcupine does for you.
It waddles down the street for you.
It chews your outhouse, it gets squirrels in your dog, it destroys your trees, but the most important thing, it is cool. It is a really cool animal. I've always kind of gravitated towards the awkward or the ugly or the unloved. I don't know, it's just the kind of person that I am. I always try to be the champion for the lesser things. And porcupines and bats are the same. It's just that I can give you the list from, about the bats do. But bottom line, everything on the planet is, I don't have to tell you guys, it's preaching to the choir, but everything on the planet here, we're serving. We are supposed to be serving. It is not supposed to be serving us. We're the stewards, we're the caretakers, and everything is here for a reason. It's part of a tapestry. You start pulling things out of the tapestry. Look what we did with DDT and all the other things that we've messed around with trying to control nature, and we make a big hot mess. We're just here to take care of it. And I think sometimes we lose sight that we are an animal and that we're here to protect the other things, all the other things.
Yeah, the question about raccoon, it raises another question. If they do attack porcupines sometimes, do porcupines ever get rabies? Have you ever heard about porcupine actually becoming aggressive because they got rabies?
I haven't, and the story with rabies, and I've talked to Randy Nelson, who is the rabies expert in our state, and I was under the impression that rodents do not get rabies. But any mammal can get rabies. Randy told me that I'm wrong, that any mammal can get rabies. Have we ever had a rabid porcupine? No. There have been rabid beavers. But I think also it's that we don't have that much exposure to porcupines, so obviously the less exposure to porcupines, the less of a chance you're going to run into a rabid one. I guess it can get rabies, but I've been led to believe that there's a lower incidence of rabies in rodents and marsupials and opossums than there are in other species. And bats, by the way, 0.5%. Very low carriers of the rabies virus. Very low carriers.
How long does, two questions. First of all, how long does a porcupine normally live? And how long, or how many years does it reproduce?
Yeah. Well, if they're living with me, they don't live very long, let me tell you. I have a bad track record with the young ones and a good track record with the older ones. Aldous said that they can live for up to 25 years. How long is the breeding? I don't know. I'm not even so sure he knows that. He may know that. I don't really know. I can't answer. I'm still pretty new at pork, so I won't even make up an answer on that one. But it's always, I love questions like this because it makes me go out and study and learn more. And hopefully next time we meet, I'll have the answer, or you can give it to me.
Do they give birth one at a time or twins?
Just only one. Only one and only once a year. They give birth this time of year, May, early June. So.
Last fall, we had a really big one, I would say 25 pounds in the yard, but there was also 2 others at the same time. Now, if they only give birth to one, and they're really kind of, is it males? Is that what we're looking at?
It could be males. When did you see it?
Must have been September.
Okay, mating season maybe.
Yeah.
A couple of guys pursuing a gal maybe. So you guys are so typical.
On the bad question, are they making any progress on controlling this?
No, none at all. In fact, it was just about 3 weeks ago or a month ago that Michigan, I think Michigan and Wisconsin came up with white nose, and those are big bat states.
Does
So
that wipe them out completely?
wipe out the little brown bat. The little brown bat will be extinct in 20 years. You know, the thing is, if I can just, don't even get me going about the bats, because I'll go crazy. I think about, and again, I'm not a scientist, I don't have a science degree or anything like that, but I know my animals, and I know that the animals that are primarily being affected by white nose syndrome are mosquito eaters. We've lost 8 million, primarily 8 million mosquito eaters. And I think 10 years down the line, without a #1 controller for mosquitoes, yeah, the dragonflies are going to benefit big time, and some of our birds will benefit, that feed at the top and the bottom of the day. But who else is out there at night feeding from mosquitoes? What about the public health implications? So I was speaking to another one of my favorite people the other day, Kirby Stafford, who works for the Agricultural Extension, and Kirby's an expert on mosquitoes and ticks and all sorts of really creepy things, great guy. And I asked Kirby if I was being an alarmist or being too dramatic, as I tend to be, about the public health implications of losing all these mosquito eaters 10 years down the line. And he said, no, there's absolutely every reason to believe that malaria could return to Connecticut. It was in New Haven once. Think about your dog and heartworm,
West Nile.
West Nile,
Heartworm.
equine encephalitis, and all these mosquito-borne.
The vet says the heartworm is, they're seeing it now.
Yeah, and we've had
It's
some.
not in southern dogs, it's in northern dogs. So,
So-
they're taking these dogs.
So again, there is a possibility that with the loss of all these animals that are mosquito predators, that we'll see an upswing in cases of West Nile, equine encephalitis, heartworm, and even possibly malaria. So that's what I'm thinking long term, not just the fact that we've lost all these bats and geez, there are a lot of mosquitoes around this summer. Just think of all the cooties that mosquitoes carry. It's terrible. So.
How would you encourage a porcupine to leave your domain?
Good luck. They're very territorial, and they are literally territorial. They're bound to their territories, especially if it's a female. What I did with this one probably wasn't right, taking her from her home. It wouldn't be right to take them and dump them somewhere else. It's actually illegal to do that. You can just try to shoo them away as much as you possibly can, with a broom or a stick or something. People have them living under their porches, and just that porch is a nice den, and try to lure it into a crate and bring it, onto a further piece of your property or something like that.
Is there kind of a plant that would repel them?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
That vinyl stuff works good if you put that up under your porch. I had to do that.
Did you really? Okay, all right. This man knows a lot, so.
Only because I had one that was coming back every night.
Yeah, they are. Again, they find their places, they find their dens, and they stake their claim. And if you can patch up those areas, then there's a good chance that they'll go somewhere else.
They don't eat vinyl so far.
They don't eat. Thank goodness they don't eat vinyl.
The white-nosed fungus from Europe, what did it do in Europe?
You see, this is the problem with us. We've studied other plants and animals for thousands of years. We've studied bats for about 70 years worldwide.
Okay.
So we don't know if there was a die-off in Europe 300 years ago, 100 years ago, 500 years ago. There are no records. Nobody studied bats. So in Europe, the bats hibernate a little bit differently. The bats that are being impacted here in the United States are primarily the mosquito eaters. They're little guys, they're very delicate, and in the winter, this fungus exists deep in caves where it's the coldest and where these crevice-dwelling bats all are roosting. The little brown bats need higher humidity, and they need a little bit more warmth than a big old crusty big brown bat. So the little brown bats will huddle together. And so say you're at the supermarket and you're dying for some raspberries, and there's some Driscolls there and they look kind of good, and you have to pay $5 for a half pint. You're going to scrutinize that half pint. You're going to pick it up, you're going to look at it, and if you see one little bit of mold, you're not buying it, because in another day that mold is going to spread. Well, it's the same thing with white nose. If one of these little guys gets it, because they're all like little raspberries in that cave, it's going to go across the colony. And so I believe that the bats in Europe are not that small, that maybe it hasn't affected them the same way, or perhaps scientists believe that maybe they've developed an immunity to it. But we're not going to have any little brown bats left to experiment on, because this thing hits so fast and so hard, it's just wiped out populations. They give birth to just one baby a year. Just one baby, a pup, that's what it's called. And if that little guy has, the first year of life for a bat, like anything in the wild, If it makes it, it's going to be a miracle. So there isn't any way that we can go, oh my goodness, let's haul them all in and have a breeding program. Too late. It's just too late. They're gone. They'll be gone. And it's that species and the Indiana bat, which is federally endangered already, the northern long-eared, the tricolored bat, all of these bats that live in Connecticut. I'm actually surprised that we haven't had a statement from the state that puts things like little brown bats on the endangered list, because their numbers have dropped. And now the big brown bats are being harmed too. They're a lot sturdier bat, but something's happening in colonies. There's a lot of pup mortality, and I've observed some stuff in captivity with adults that is absolutely bizarre, that I think is linked to the fact that the pups are dying. I think there's something neurological that's affecting the big browns. This is just strictly speculative and from what I've witnessed in my own home. I think something is happening to them where they forget how to eat. They literally forget how to eat. So the females become pregnant, and all winter long it appears that everything is normal, except then when it's spring, they just kind of hang there and they don't do anything. And they give birth, and the pups have nothing to eat, and all these babies are dying. The mothers might go flying out at night, but they're not eating. Nothing is happening. So I've had systematically all winter long these gorgeous looking big brown bats all just kick the bucket on me. They're all dying. All the animals that I've used for programs, these lovely animals that I've hand raised, they've all died. So I don't know if there's cooties in my house. I have no idea. And the sad thing is that the animals are so small that you can't extract anything from them. They're so tiny that, I mean, you'd probably need 1,000 of them, 1,000 bodies in order for a scientist to get any kind of information out of them. So we're just kind of left hanging, as it were. Every week there's a national conference on white nose syndrome where biologists from all over the place go and discuss on the phone, strategies or ideas, or tell stories. And I'm not privy to any of that. That's strictly for the scientists. But they're doing everything they can with the minimal resources that they've been given. So, I don't know.
And the bees.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the bees. Everybody says that they're totally unrelated, and I just spend too much time thinking about bats to know what the story is on the honeybees. I mean, we certainly had our fair share of colony collapse at White Memorial. So, I'm just going to move my stuff aside here so I can bring this cranky thing out. You can still ask questions if you'd like.
Oh, you're a multitasker.
Oh, yes. As a chef and a broadcaster, you have to be.
Gary, other than destroying your property, what does it eat in the wild generally?
They eat lily pads. They love berries. They love apple trees. If you've got an old orchard like I have on my property, and especially in the winter, if they come out of their dens, they're going to be hanging on those apple trees getting drunk. I'm not lying. Aldous told me they get bombed on the fermented apples. It's clumsy to begin with. Can you imagine? So they love apples. They love pears. They hang out in old orchards or new orchards. Again, it's conifer needles. Linden, sawtooth, aspen, they like those trees. So they, again, have specific trees that they really love and others that they won't go near. Like, I've never had trouble with them in my maple trees, but I've seen them in my sister-in-law's willow. Willow's a very soft, at the top of the willow, just going back and forth, moving all over the place.
Do they get any nutrition from those leaves, Gary? Like, say it's an ash.
Oh, sure,
An aspen,
sure.
it's still nutritious?
They require a lot of potassium in their diet, so my guys get actually a banana every day. My husband would say, they don't get that in the wild. Of course they don't get that in the wild. But they require potassium, and we're all kind of cowboys. I don't feed mine rodent chowder at all. Mine get, all of you guys could come over to my home and we could have a luncheon together with a porcupine, and you guys would walk away very happy. They get fresh berries, strawberries, blueberries, a peanut butter sandwich, a little bit of protein, on a really nice grainy bread. What else do my guys get? Lettuce, apples, pears, carrots, sweet potatoes. All of these things are things that I feed my porcupines. Yeah. Sometimes they're lucky they get cashew nuts as well. If they're on sale. If I go to Aldi.
There we go.
Okay. She's not going to like me. And I'm sorry to say she's not gonna like you either, but that's okay. She's a lovely animal, and, hi. Guess what, crabby face? And I've never seen anything eat like this one. Phew. She is such a little slob. Now, are you coming out? Of course you are. Come on. I just don't want to, the reason I'm tentative is not because I'm afraid of her. I just don't want to get shavings all over the fire department. It's okay. It's okay. Come on. As I said, what I've loved so much about this animal is that she has never used her tail on me. Could somebody get this crate off of here, please? That would be great. Thank you. So she's really afraid. She's shaking. She doesn't like to be held. I'm going to hold her though. I'm going to hold her and I'm going to walk her over here. And I'm not going to keep her out for a long time because she is so nervous. This is all really new for her. I don't do a lot of porcupine programs. You don't have to be afraid, sweetie. You don't have to be afraid. Don't be afraid. The only thing you might be afraid of is how she's a little bit stinky. That's it. But she's a really good-looking animal, and as I said, just collected from the wild, has never climbed a day in her life. She talks to me in the morning, she begs for food, she lets me pet her with my bare hands. I've never really handled one quite like her. I've had really cool encounters with wild porcupines, and again, it's an animal that I would encourage you to approach in the wild. But you know, I think this is just a really old girl. I think it's a really old animal, and maybe she was just tired, and she doesn't. I know it's unfair for me to hold you like this.
What kind of sound?
Oh, they make a sound like this. But you can see clearly, I don't know if you can see her belly with my hands in the way. I know. You're very nervous. This just ain't natural. It's not natural. And of course, what I am doing also, even though I love her and I pretty much trust her now, is I'm keeping my hand well out of the way of her teeth. I'm getting quills all over me right now, but I don't even care about that. It's her teeth that I'm afraid of. But she's never bitten me. She's always been very, very solid and very sweet and very, very patient with me. And I suppose if I would bring her to work and let her, you know, hang out in my office with me all day and I handled her every single day, she would tame down pretty quickly for programs, but you know, it's not so important. What's important is the message and nice camera. I'm going to, how many teeth do they have? I don't know. See, what she's trying to do is she wants to use me as a tree, but she really doesn't know anything about climbing. Pacer used to be very, very comfortable in my arms, so I'm going to put her away if you don't mind.
Yeah, she's kind of nervous.
Yeah, she's just very, very nervous. She's always this way. Are you through? You through? Thank you, that would be great. How much does she weigh? She's about 15 pounds, I'd say 15, 16. And she's solid. They're really solid animals, despite the fact that she eats incessantly. There's not a lot of fat on her. There you go.
How long has she been with you, dear?
I'm sorry?
How long has she been with you?
She's been with me for 2 years.
Really? 2 years?
Yeah. 2 years. But again, I've used others. It was just a lot easier for me to handle the babies. See, this is the, that's why we have the quill cup over here to the left. But I haven't used her in programs. I've been using the young ones, and I don't have any young ones anymore. I'd use her. It was always like, do I use the little ones? The little ones are so easy to handle. They're so easy to hold, even though they're ticked off as all get out. But I'd switch off and I'd take her occasionally. It's just that she's much bigger and she's much more nervous. The little ones you just have, it's just easier to handle them because they're so much smaller. But now she's all I've got, so tough. You know,
So when you take her home, does she stay in a crate? Or
No,
does she
she's
have
got a
room?
huge kennel that she lives in. It's a cushy thing. You could live in there, Missy, if you wanted.
Okay, great.
It's pretty good digs. You'd have to live down next to next door in my barn next to the new pig.
Abe.
The pig that next to Abe that I just got.
Yeah.
He's just a charmer. I've always wanted a pig. I just got a
So
pig.
how
the other
much
day.
space does she have?
She's got a huge dog run. From that wall to maybe here. Maybe here, and it's about 2 tables wide.
Yeah.
And she's got a crate in it. There's some trees in there, but she never climbs them, and she can chew on them if she'd like. And that's it. I mean, she really is, she's not a climber. She's never tried to do anything. I think she does nibble on the trees once in a while. I will eventually have to bring her to the vet to have her teeth done as well, to file them down.
Do you ever give her a tree mask, like willow trees and just?
Yes, I do. I give her, we're giving them some maples the other day, and apple branches as well. Yeah, and I should go to Brenda's house. Thank you for the willow suggestion. My sister-in-law will let me clip some willow for her.
If you happen to be walking through the woods in the summertime and you come to a stand of adult beech trees.
Yes.
Look at the bark, and then you can tell how much snow there was last winter, because they get in there, they stand on their hind feet, and they just go right around the big beech trees.
Yep.
And you look at the trees in the summertime, you'll say, how could they stand up that high? Well, they get up on top of the snow and they just keep eating
Yep.
right around the tree.
Yeah, this is an example of the damage that porcupines do to trees. You know, and this, you know, done to a lot of a tree is going to kill it. It really is going to do a number on a tree, but a friend just gave this to me. And they chewed this maple tree 12 feet off the ground. And again, they're after that layer of cambium. They're not so much after this, they're after that layer that's in between the trunk of the tree, or the, you know, whatever that is, the limb of the tree, and the bark. What's in between is what they're seeking, is what they really want. I brought a really cool skull here, both of Aldis's books. And again, I encourage you, if you really are interested in porcupines, last year, the year before last, he came out with this book called Porcupines, the Animal Answer Guide. This probably has the answer that we need to your question about the females, so if I've read it, it's just a terrific book, and he is a great man. I will try to have him back to White Memorial. He's quite elderly right now, but he can be baited with food. So if I promise him a really good luncheon, Aldous will come out for a luncheon. See, look at this. I was just, they just stick right to you.
Do you have a question here? Go ahead and ask Jerry.
What's your question?
How come the quills don't hurt the porcupine?
Well, I don't know. The porcupine can't talk, so maybe they do when he quills himself. The stuff that's stuck in him would be sort of like this is the end that's stuck in him, and it sticks in me a little bit too. But it certainly isn't like this end. This end isn't barbed, so this just comes out really easily. There's a little layer of muscle underneath where the skin, and when they get upset, they loosen that muscle up, and it makes the quills very easy to detach. So when he quills himself, maybe it does hurt. But I don't speak porcupine, so I can't talk. I mean, I do, but
So there's no easy way of pulling out those quills?
no easy way of pulling them out.
You just gotta yank them out?
I just stood over a sink once and just pulled them out of my knuckles, and somebody told me that all you have to do is clip them off.
I heard that.
They're hollow. Clip them and turn them clockwise, counterclockwise, left, so clockwise. And I couldn't be bothered with that. I just want them out of my knuckles. I had one embedded in my thumb nail for 6 months, and it didn't hurt. I was whacked by Skeeter, actually. Her tail was very small and very mighty, and she whacked me in the hand, and I thought I got all of them out. And I was in the shower, and I actually felt one coming out of my thumb, so thank God it went in the right direction out. But my thumb had one embedded in it, and we just watched it for 6 months, slowly coming out. It didn't hurt, it was just in there, but I just took it right down in here, and it just went in such a way that it wasn't painful. I just happened to get a show for 6 months.
I've heard, and it might be old wives' tale, that when the porcupine, when a dog gets stuck with them generally, that they actually embed themselves deeper and deeper as they go along.
Oh yeah, they do, because again, if it's getting whacked by a tail, it's going to be getting whacked really hard, and the dog is not going to just nuzzle it gently. The dog's going to bury its head in there. So those quills are going to go in far, and with every motion of in the dog, every muscle movement, those quills are just going to keep on working more and more. This book, did I tell you the story? I've done so many work programs this week. This book, How Do You Spank a Porcupine? Ronald Root has another story. I told you about the Natural History Museum and the skeletons with the cracks in them. He was a science teacher, and he was observing a porcupine in his backyard. I think he was from Vermont. Observing a porcupine in a tree. He was up the tree with the porcupine, and he got hit. by the tail. I think it was down in this area of his arm. And about 2 weeks later, he was teaching a class, and he felt his shirt catching on something. And a quill had worked its way up his arm and came out and was sticking his shirt. So again, he was lucky too. You know, whenever I get quilled, and I haven't gotten quilled really badly, but I have gotten quilled, especially the knuckles. That was really most unpleasant. You always wonder if you got all of them out. And that's why when you see those 2 pictures of the dogs in the presentation, what veterinarian? It's got to be my first vet. Did anybody know Russ Kellogg from the Winston Hospital for Animals? I loved him so much. Russ was my vet when I first started rehab, and he was my bat vet. But he wouldn't even dream of taking care of a porcupine. I would have to go to Dr. Humphreys in Torrington, because Russ just couldn't stand them. You know, they're just not an animal that's loved, because they're just a nightmare for veterinarians. They just, you know, I'm sure veterinarians make a good deal of money from that, but to what avail? I mean, the looming question is, did I get all of them out? Especially when they're in the mouth. It's really bad.
Jerry, do they sleep in the daytime or at night?
Yeah, they sleep primarily in the daytime, and when they sleep, holy mackerel do they sleep. I thought sometimes my guys are dead. They're so sound because they've got all of that peace of mind, all of their bodies. I've never seen an animal just conk out. Is it breathing? Because they sleep so deeply. They've got every reason in the world to sleep really deeply. So yeah, and they'll go up in a tree during the day, or they'll go in a den. They're not going to be laying out in you know, a pretty little area somewhere. They're going to be either high up or hiding in a den somewhere.
Because there was one about a month or 2 ago in my yard, kind of a little wooded section, but we were all open, and I was shocked. I'm like, what is this? And it's a porcupine. It's probably 10 in the morning. And
was it sleeping?
Well, yeah, I guess so. Well, because I just kind of left it alone.
Maybe it was in a food
yard,
coma.
Came back half hour later. I moved about 3 feet.
Yep.
I couldn't even tell where its head was. And then it kind of lifted up its head. I said, oh, there's the front. And then
Yeah.
an hour later, it was gone. So.
Yeah, and again, they can afford to be very cavalier about where they are because of their armor. They really think that they're the bomb. They really think that nobody and nothing is going to be able to hurt them. So yeah, it's not saying you. I've had plenty of daytime encounters with porcupines. You can see them during the daytime. They are, you know, walking around the daytime, but they're primarily nocturnal. And that's where they run into their biggest problems.
Do they shed, since the quills are like hair?
Not really. They shed their fur, the actual fur. Like she's in the process of losing her winter coat, but the quills, they'll just drop them just as, you know, we brush our hair and some hairs come out, but they don't molt per se. And the quills are covered in this grease. It's really kind of interesting. I don't know if it's waterproofing on them, or I should probably do some reading on that, but it's kind of greasy and odd.
Is it an antibiotic?
Might be the antibiotic. I don't know. Any other questions, thoughts, comments, concerns?
Could you tell us about your place in Litchfield that you...
Oh, I'd love to talk about White Memorial. Jeez, do we have all night together?
A few minutes.
I just have to be at work at 11 tomorrow to lead a hike. So White Memorial is the largest private wildlife sanctuary in our state. It was gifted by an astonishing brother and sister, Elaine and May White, 101 years ago. We just celebrated our 100th anniversary in 2013. These 2 people were visionaries, and they gifted 4,000 acres of open space in Litchfield at a time when everybody was farming. So they had to be super radical, and I bet a lot of people didn't like them. They were buying up land left and right. Their objective was to acquire 100% of the land around Bantam Lake, which is Connecticut's largest natural lake. And they did a pretty good job of acquiring 60% of the land. The foundation, the White Memorial Foundation, today manages 4,000 acres and counting. They're actually about ready to acquire, I think, another 10-acre parcel in Litchfield. But what was even more extraordinary about the Whites was that they were land junkies in other portions of the state, too. So for those of us who enjoy People's State Forest, that was owned by Elaine and May White. And Kent Falls was owned by Elaine and May, and Macedonia State Park, Campbell's Falls. Their conservation efforts were as far-reaching as Farmington, as an Old Lyme, and I believe part of Sleeping Giant. And what they did is everything that wasn't in Litchfield, they gifted to the state of Connecticut, and that is the foundation of our park system. So, and they did it quietly. They didn't do it with fanfare. They didn't expect accolades or pats on the back. And I truly believe that Elaine and Mae White were two of the greatest land conservationists in the history of our nation, certainly the most important land conservationists in the state of Connecticut. So today, what is left of their summer home, Whitehall, is a beautiful nature museum, and I'm not saying it because I work there. You know, my boss isn't here, so I can say anything I want. I truly believe that it's the most beautiful museum of its kind in our state, probably one of the most beautiful in the nation. It's a beautiful walk through that property. So if you don't have a chance to come out and explore the 4,000 acres, the 35 miles of trails, you can come through the museum and get kind of a synopsis of what's out there. So for your next visit, you'll know where you want to go. It's really great. We do programs for adults and children. There are summer programs for kids that are running this year. And I'm Director of Administration and Development, and I'm in charge of Saturday programming. So we do programs that involve music. The Whites use the property for whimsy. Art and nature are symbiotic. So I think when I came to White 7 years ago, almost 7 years ago, I brought a little bit of a dimension to the job, because before, my predecessor was always bird walks, and you know, I would love to think that we're all nature junkies, but not everybody is, and you have to try to be many things. And the Whites used that property for theater. They staged little plays in the backyard. They were never married, just a brother and sister, neither of them married, and they brought children in from Litchfield and they wrote plays, adaptation of plays. We just did a production of a play that they had written an adaptation of, Through the Looking Glass, last year in the backyard, where they actually staged the plays. They'd have high teas for children. They had outdoor dinners, and I try to bring that music and art and nature all together again. So there's obviously a lot of nature programs, lots of hikes, but also a lot of art that I try to bring into in music and in food, and bring that into the Conservation Center as well, and use the property the way the Whites actually used it. We're having a boat parade on June 21st. You can deck out your kayak or your canoe and pay a nominal fee, and we do a high tea on Chickadee Bridge, and everybody gussies up their canoes and kayaks, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. No, it's on Bantam River. On Bantam River. So you can look at our calendar events on our website, whitememorialcc, as in conservationcenter.org. You can become a member. You can come out and visit us. We're open. The park is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The museum is open 7 days a week. It's 9 to 5 Monday through Saturday, and Sundays from noon until 5, and we're only closed on major holidays, or on Sunday if it's the Litchfield Blues Road Race. So that's a little bit.
Is there any relationship to the White Flower Farm?
No, they aren't, and that's one of the, people always wander in and say, where can I buy my petunias? Whatever. But the Whites had a great legacy. If any of you are familiar with the city of Danbury, there's a street called White Street, and that was named after John Jay, their father. The Whites have a legacy as furriers, believe it or not, and mostly in real estate was where they made their money. Elaine was a published botanist. Brilliant man, and he deciphered with complex chess problems that helped decipher World War I codes. He was a genius, an absolute genius, really extraordinary brother and sister. She was 10 years older than he was, and she really took care of him growing up. And when she became ill, they moved to South Carolina, and Whitehall kind of fell into ruin for whatever reason. I'm always grateful that the Whites didn't marry, because we wouldn't be speaking today, about White Memorial, because if they had heirs, they would have carved up the land left and right. So they really left an astonishing legacy in our state. Thanks so much for coming out. Thank you. I'm sorry she's such a poop, but you guys understand.
Yeah, I just can't get into your thing, but as a little token of our appreciation, I'd like you to have whatever.
I love it.
If that doesn't fit you, you can select it.
Oh, I like red though. Thank you. Thank you so much.
We have just a few other things. Joyce?
If anyone would like to buy a raffle
Right.
ticket for one of those hats,
Right.
or a Bluebird house, we're going to be raffling them off.
Right, so just pick up your hand and we'll come around. You can buy a couple of tickets or whatever. I just would like to extend our thanks to the East Hartland Fire Department for providing the venue tonight, the town of Hartland for the town room for our monthly meetings, and the Hartland school staff for support and equipment. And last but not least, thanks to Neil and Harold for filming all our events. Just a few words about the mystique of Hartland being over 82% forested and 75% open space provides a precious source of the highest quality of water in the state. Our woods and trees are the significant force in keeping our cold water streams pristine. It is because of our landowners' respect for their woodlands who enjoy the remarkable beauty of Hartland. Let's continue to work together to keep our town the town you would like to see years from now. Support our land trust by perhaps becoming a member, sponsor a speaker, or volunteer to help the cause. At the moment, we're seeking to fill several positions. If you would like to help us, we're looking for a publicity project leader, a membership and fundraising coordinator, and a land conservation assistant. So speak to us or give us a call or email us if you'd like to volunteer to help in any way. As Joyce said, we have a couple of door prizes. We have the baseball cap that's going to be seen all over town. We have the handmade bluebird house. So where are the tickets to pull? Okay, does one of the kids want to pull a ticket for the cap? Yeah, just go ahead, go over to Joyce and you can pull a ticket. Go ahead. You can each pull one. So first we'll do the cap. And read the names so we can hear them. Can we hear the names?
They're still writing tickets.
Oh, they're still writing tickets. Okay, that's fine. That's great. Well, I wanted to thank everybody for coming and enjoy your summer and enjoy refreshments now. We have some coffee, cookies, chocolates, some great stuff.
We have some signs at this table.
Oh, excuse me, one more minute. We have a couple of certificates of appreciation as well. We have one for Rowan Borderwick, who helped us with our website and our Facebook page. Would you like to take this, Harold, for Rowan?
Good job.
And